Okay, so for number 3 here, um, they've given me f of x, which means the same thing as y. Like, all right. And they've given me x, so this is x and this is y. For some reason, whenever they say f of x, I just have to know it's the same thing as y. And then they've given me all of these points. And so I'm just going to go one point at a time. Like I might start with 0, like when x equals 0. So if x is 0, that means like I'm right on the y-axis. When x is 0, then the y is supposed to be negative 1/2. So if I look at A, when x is 0, does it look like I have a y at negative 1/2? It does. Okay, I'm going to leave that one. For B, when x is 0, does it look like I have a y? No, y is way down here. And so like B is going to go. And then for y, if x is 0, nope. I either have like down here or I have like way up here, so I don't have that. And then for D, hey, when x is 0, according to this, y is supposed to be negative 1/2. And D is also no good. I don't have a y at negative 1/2. I have it at positive 1/2. So that guy's got to go as well. And we are done. All right. And then the next one that you had a question on was number 9, I believe. Okay. Yep. So sum means adding. And then I am only allowed to add guys that are the same. So if I have A and I have A squared, I can't add those. Those guys are just going to be A and A squared. And similarly, B squared and B, I can't add those guys either. If I had A plus A, then I could do 2A. Or if I had A squared plus A squared, then I have 2 A squareds. But if they're not the same, if they don't have the same exponent, I can't do anything with them. And so this one is just going to be AB squared plus A squared B, which is D. That is them just being cocky and sassy, like disrespectful. It's the SAT being disrespectful. Okay, and then, so number 11, this is a circle formula one. And this is one I want you, if you come across it, to go ahead and like get out and get to other questions first. But there's two things I have to do here. First, the circle formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared, and it equals the radius squared. You'll notice that is not the form that they have put that thing in. So my first job is to turn this formula into this formula. So the very first thing I'm going to do is take that 1 and move it over to the other side of the equation by calling it negative 1. Then I am going to put the x's together. X squared minus 2x. If I'm going to turn x squared minus 2x into a perfect square, what I'm going to do is put x and x, and then I can take this thing and just split it in half. So negative 1, negative 1. That way when I FOIL, x times x is x squared, and then negative 1x plus negative 1x equals negative 2x. Like, yay, I just made x squared minus 2x. However, I've also made negative 1 times negative 1. So there's a positive 1 in there. And I can write this, by the way, as if I have x minus 1 times x minus 1, I can write it as x minus 1 squared. When I do that, that takes care of the x squared and the negative 2x, but I've created a positive 1 out of thin air in there. It's in there, I can't see it, so I have to add positive 1 to the other side. There already was negative 1 there, so now I'm going to add positive 1. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the y's. I've got y squared plus 6y, and I have to turn that into a perfect square. So I'm like, oh, that's going to be y and y. I'll split this thing in half to make it 3 and 3. Y plus 3, y plus 3. Yay! I've made y plus 3 squared. And then that takes care of the y squared part. That takes care of the 6y part. However, I have just created 3 times 3 out of thin air. So there's a 9 in there. I can't see it, but it's in there. So I've got to add it to the other side. And then now I have my circle formula. The negative 1 and the positive 1 take each other out. So it's just x minus 1 plus y plus 3 equals 9. And the actual circle formula is, this is the center, the x coordinate of the center, this is the x coordinate of the y coordinate of the center, or the opposites of it, and then this is the radius squared. So if this is 9 If 9 equals the radius squared, then the radius equals 3 because it's a square root, which is that guy. But that is super involved, and I don't want you to get tangled up in that thing on the actual test. On the actual test, look at that thing. If you see what to do, good. But if it's like, what? I want you to get out to other questions, and especially the ones at the end of this thing. All right. So, so number 13, this is something they really, really like to do a lot. If they gave me a system of equations, they give me two equations, and then they say the system has no solutions. If there's no x squareds or y squareds, there's no curvy lines involved. If a system of equations has no solutions, that means that those lines are parallel. And so what I'm going to do is put each of these things into y equals mx plus b form so I can see what the slopes are. So for x plus 2y equals 8, I have to get y by itself. So I'll subtract x from both sides to get 2y equals negative x plus 8. And then I have to divide both sides by 2, which are going to give me y equals negative 1/2 x plus 4. And now for this one, I'll do the same thing. I have to move, it's going to be, if I move the x over, it is going to give me 3y equals negative kx plus 9. Then I have to divide both sides by 3. Y equals negative k divided by 3x plus 3. And now, because I know that these lines are parallel, the slopes have to be equal. So the slope of this line is negative 1/2. Basically, that has to be the same thing as this. So negative 1/2 has to equal negative k over 3. And at this point, I can cross multiply. 2 times negative k is negative 2k, and 3 times 1, or 3 times negative 1. I guess I should assign the negative to one of these guys or the other of these guys, but 3 times negative 1 is going to be negative 3. And then if I am dividing by negative 2, k is going to equal 3 over 2, which happily is an answer choice. Okay, so if they give me two lines and they say no solution, those are parallel lines. If they say infinite solutions, that means they're the same line. If they say one solution, it means those lines cross just in one place. Okay, and let's see, the next one that you had was, oops, is this number 15? Okay, so this is another one that's like sort of tricky. They've given me a quadratic, and they want me to solve for x. I might try plugging 2 in, because it looks easy enough to plug in. But when I see these other answer choices, I'm thinking it's probably not going to work. And it turns out like, yeah, no, 4 plus 8 minus 20 does not equal 0, so it's not going to be 2. As soon as I see square roots in answer choices when they're talking about a quadratic, I am probably either going to have to use a quadratic formula, or I'm going to complete the square. And for this one, I think it's going to be easier to complete the square. So I'm going to start with x squared plus 4x minus 20 equals 0. I'm going to move the 20 over. So now I have x squared plus 4x equals 20. And now I want to make a perfect square, just like I did on the circle one before. So I'm going to make parentheses squared. This is just going to be x, and I'm going to split this one in half, x plus 2. So if I do x plus 2 times x plus 2, which is what x plus 2 squared is, x times x is x squared, good. 2x plus 2x is 4x, good. But I've got an extra 2 times 2 in there. So when I write x plus 2 squared here, there's an extra 4 in there that I've just created out of thin air, and I have to add that to the other side. So now I should have x plus 2 squared equals 24. And now I can take the square root of both sides to solve. So note that the only other tricky thing is if I take the square root of 24 like this, it has to be the positive or negative square root of 24. And then that is going to equal x plus 2. And now to solve, I just have to move the 2 over. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 24. Now I'm going to look at the answer choices. So I know it's got to be -2, so I can get rid of b. And then it's either going to be, the plus or minus here doesn't help me, but it's going to be 2 times the square root of 2 or 2 times the square root of 6. And this is where this one gets a little trickier again. If I have the square root of 24, I can split that up into 6 and like 6 times 4, the square root of 6 times 4, and I know the square root of 4, so I can get it out of jail. So I can turn that into 2 root 6, which means it's got to be D. But this is another one I am perfectly happy. Like, try jamming 2 in there. We're not in the calculator section, so I'm just going to let that one go and get out to other questions, like, honestly. Okay, and and then this is, oh, the last guy here. Yeah, so this one is mildly annoying, but try to figure it out as well. The big clue is that they told me y equals mx plus b. It's like, okay, that is a slope equation. And then I have to just put the numbers inside of these things. If OABE is a square with an area of 25, that means each of these sides is going to be 5. I'm like, all right, and I'm just going to write that in. And then the other one is 9. Each of these things is going to be 3. Like, okay, now I think we're getting somewhere. And then constants just mean that those are numbers that I have to, they're hidden and I have to figure them out. So if I'm talking about points B and C, I'm going to try to figure, because they're talking about coordinate geometry with y equals mx plus b. If this starts at 0, point B would be 5, 5. And point C is going to be 5 and 3 over, like, point C is going to have an x coordinate of 8 and a y coordinate of 3. And if I've got 2 points, I can make myself a y equals mx plus b out of them. So the slope is going to be rise over run, or the change in y over the change in x. When I went from 5 to 3, I went -2 rise. And when I went from 5 to 8, I went +3 run. So y equals -2/3 x plus b. And now, in order to figure out b, I can just take either 5, 5 or 8, 3 and plug those x and y's in for these guys. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just do 5, 5 because it seems easier. So like 5, instead of y, I put 5 equals -2/3 times 5 plus b. And now I have to do -2/3 times 5. I'm going to put a 1 under the 5 to make it a fraction. And if I'm multiplying fractions, I just multiply straight across. And we're just going to assign the negative to the top number there. -2 times 5 is -10. 3 times 1 is 3. I'm like, all right. So now I have 5 equals -10 over 3 plus b. And I'm going to subtract -10 over 3 from both sides, which basically means I'm going to subtract negative, means I'm going to add. So this turns all of a sudden at the end into a fraction question. 5 plus 10 over 3, which is the opposite of -10 over 3. And I'm going to start by putting a 1 here, and then I have to have common denominators. So I can either cross multiply and multiply across the bottoms, or I can see like, oh, right, if I make this 3, it's going to make this 15. Now I can add them up directly. 15 plus 10 is 25. 25 divided by 3. That is the value of b. And then my only other check is, can I write that in the little things? Like, oh yeah, 25 divided by 3. And we're good. And we're done. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. And have fun with section 4, like when you get to it as well.